The first section of the inventory module we will discuss is vendor setup. It's important to enter your vendors early on, as you will need vendor information to create requests for bid and purchase orders. Under the inventory navigation, I will now click on the Setup Vendors button, which takes us to this screen titled Vendor List. This area allows for an operator to locate a vendor by simply typing in the vendor's name, phone number, or email in the quick search box over on the right and clicking Go. Once this is done, Easy Maintenance will automatically locate the vendor from this vendor list. For ease of use, simply clicking on the column headings will sort the vendors either alphabetically or in numerical sequence. If you select a vendor by clicking on their vendor ID, you will see a list of additional contacts for that vendor appear below the list of vendors itself. You can use the yellow New button on the right part of the screen to add a new vendor to the list, and the Print button will print the list of vendors you see here. Right now we'll go ahead and look at a vendor whose information has already been entered. I'll click on the Edit button for a vendor to see what information has been entered for them. Clicking on the Edit button takes us to the vendor information screen, where information already entered for a vendor can be changed. If the operator had clicked on the New button for entering new vendor information, they would be taken to a screen looking exactly like this one, only with the data fields blank, and would then have to enter in new vendor information. As you can see here, there's room for the address and other contact information, including email. The terms the purchaser has for purchases made from this vendor can be placed here, and the preferred status of the vendor can be selected here from drop-down menus. There's also an area for notes that can explain peculiarities or other information unique to this particular vendor. In addition, a mailing label for this vendor can be printed right from this individual vendor's area. I'll go ahead and click Cancel to exit from this screen and return to the vendor list. Lastly, I'll explain how to add additional contacts for a vendor. First, select a vendor by clicking on their vendor ID in the leftmost column. You'll see that vendor highlighted in blue to indicate that record has been selected. Now click on the Add Contact Info. This will pop up another window here in which we can add contact information for the vendor we've selected. Enter that contact's name, phone number, address, title, email, and other information you wish to add, and then click the Save button. That new contact will be added to the list. Now I'll demonstrate how to work directly with the inventory in EZMWeb. Clicking on Inventory Item under the Inventory tab brings us to this screen. Here you can see all of the inventory items that have been entered into EZMWeb so far. This is the section of the inventory module from which you enter new items in the inventory, make changes to existing inventory items, and add to or subtract from the quantities you have listed on hand for each inventory item. In the center of the screen you can see the list of items in your inventory. For each item you can see the item number and name, whether it's a material or a part, whether that inventory item is used for equipment or vehicle maintenance, the quantity currently on hand, and another column that indicates whether the quantity in stock of an item has fallen below the minimum level, in which case the letter C for critical would display here in a red font. Other statuses may display in this column depending on the level of the item, and these can be seen right here below the list of inventory items. On the right side of the screen are some search functions. You can search for an inventory item using the quick search box. Just select whether you want to search by item number or inventory item name by marking the small circle next to the option you desire by clicking on it, and then type the item number or inventory item name in the search box and click on the Go button. The page will then be updated with your search results. If your inventory items also have printed barcodes on them, you can also use the Scan a Barcode box to search for an inventory item. Just place your cursor into the search box, swipe the item using a barcode scanner, and click on the Go button. You can also print out some reports at this screen. Right below the search boxes we just discussed, you'll see a box called Reports that lists 3 reports you can print: a complete list of materials, a list of materials to order, and a printout of barcodes of items you have in your inventory. To input a new inventory item into the application, first click on the yellow New button on the right side of the screen. This will bring you to this screen, which is a form into which you enter all the information about the new inventory item. The first 2 data entry boxes you see here are for the item number and the item name. The item number is unique and can be composed of letters, numbers, or dashes, and is used for cataloging purposes inside of EZMWeb. No other inventory item can share this item number. The item name is simply a descriptive name you choose to assign to the item to identify its use. And right below these items, you must choose whether you want the inventory item to be active or inactive. When the item is set to inactive, it is essentially frozen and cannot be used. This is useful when you'd like to halt the use of a particular item for some reason, but do not want to delete it entirely from the application. Next, you will have to enter the date on which the item was entered into the application, the preferred vendor for that inventory item, and the manufacturer. In the pricing information below that, the first thing you will enter is the units in which you quantify the inventory item. For example, if we were adding oil as an inventory item, you might put quarts as the units. The next thing you enter is the cost per unit, and then any markups you add to the base price. Below that, the total cost is calculated. Next, in detailed identifying information, you can put any additional identifying codes you want in the two ID data entry boxes here. In these two drop-down boxes, you must also select whether the inventory item you are entering is a material or a replacement part, and whether the material or part is being used for equipment maintenance, vehicle maintenance, or both. Now we also need to enter some information in the quantity and related information section of this form. First, enter the quantity of this item you currently have on hand in your physical inventory. Next, enter the minimum level allowed for this inventory item. This is basically the level below which you need to have more units of this item reordered. Then, put in the maximum level allowed in your inventory, and then the quantity at which you want to reorder this item, if, for example, you want to order only 5 units at a time of some item. Lastly, you can enter a lengthy description of the item if you wish in the long description data entry box. This can contain any details of the item you think are relevant to the operator of the program. You can also enter the location where this inventory unit is stored in the warehouse location box. This location can be, of course, a warehouse or a bin location. When you are finished, click on the Save button and the inventory item will be added to EZMWeb and will be available for use throughout the application. One more aspect of the inventory module we should discuss is how to check in and check out inventory items. If we click on an inventory item, we will see a list of records for when quantities of that inventory item were checked in and checked out. As we said earlier, inventory items are automatically checked in and checked out of your inventory when you save work orders in EZMWeb. However, sometimes you may wish to do this manually if, for example, you make a transaction outside of EZMWeb that needs to be reflected in your inventory quantities. At the bottom of the list of transaction records, you can see 3 buttons: Check In, Check Out, and Return. These allow you to manually add or subtract from the quantities you have in your inventory. The Check In button allows you to add quantities of items to your inventory. Check Out allows you to subtract quantities of items from your inventory. The Return button serves a slightly different purpose. It allows you to return unused quantities of items to your inventory which had previously been checked out. You may also receive items directly into inventory against a purchase order, which we'll address a bit later. Now I'll show you how to create requests for bid. We will start by opening the Inventory menu from the left main navigation, then click on Request for Bid. We will be taken to this screen. From this screen, an operator can find a previously created request for bid from the list here, or by typing in a previously created request for bid number over here in our quick search box to the right of the screen. EZMWeb will find it and display it in the list. Below the quick search box, we have the familiar Actions box that has 2 functions. The first one is New, which will create a new request for bid. The second option, Print, will give us a pop-up window that will allow me to print a printer-friendly version of the highlighted request for bid. You can see what material or materials a vendor is being requested to bid on by clicking on the bid number here. Below you will see an RFB material table that displays the materials requested, how many are requested, and the delivery date of the material. We can modify the materials being requested in 2 different ways. The first is to click the Edit icon down here in the RFB material table. When I do this, you will see a new window pop up at the bottom of the page. This window allows us to change the material, the quantity requested, we can add comments, and we can change the expected delivery date. This is a quick and easy way to change the materials requested. Now, if we want to make further changes to a request, we need to edit the entire request for bid. We can do that by clicking the Edit icon for the request in the list of requests for bid. I'll go ahead and do that now. The information contained on this screen will be exactly the same information that would be required to be entered if we were creating a new request for bid. The first field is the date. This is the date the request for bid was created. EZMWeb will automatically set this date to today's date. Over here on the right, we have a large text area for a description of this request for bid. We can enter a rather lengthy description here if we so choose. Below this information is the vendor list. If we want to send this request to multiple vendors, I simply highlight their entry here, click the right-facing arrow, and they are added to my Send RFB To list. I would reverse this operation if I wanted to remove a vendor from my Send RFB To list. I would highlight the entry and click the left-facing arrow to remove the entry. Below the vendors area, we have the list of materials we are requesting. If I click on the Edit icon over here on the right, you will again see a new window pop up displaying the information on this material request: the material, the quantity, notes, and the expected delivery date. I can edit this information and click Save to save the changes, or click Cancel to abort the changes. I'll go ahead and cancel these changes. Now, in order to add another material to this request, I click on the Add Details button. This will bring up that familiar window, but at this time the information is blank since we are adding a new material. I select the material from this drop-down and its name appears to the right. I set my quantity and comments I wish to make and the expected delivery date and click Save. It's just that easy to add a material to a request for bid. I'll go ahead and cancel out of this table, and then I'll click Cancel again to return to the list of requests for bid. The process for creating a new request for bid is very similar. However, there's one key difference. Over here in the Actions panel, I will click on the New button. This will bring me to a blank request for bid page. Here I can create a brand new request for bid. The information has not been changed. However, you'll notice one thing. At the bottom of the page, you will see that there is no Add Details button. This will only appear after I have saved this request for bid. I would add my information here and then click on Save before I could add my materials. I'll now demonstrate how to create a purchase order in EZMWeb. First, to navigate to the Purchase Order section of the Inventory module, click on Purchase Order under the Inventory tab. This will take you to a list of the current purchase orders. This is the section of the program from which you will create new purchase orders and edit existing ones. For each purchase order you see listed here, you can see the purchase order number, the vendor from whom you're making the purchase, and the date on which the purchase order was made. If you click on a purchase order number, the list of materials being ordered in that purchase order will be displayed in the list below. You can also print the list of purchase orders you see here by clicking on the yellow Print button on the right side of the screen. To create a new purchase order, you would click on the yellow New button on the right part of the screen. Doing this takes us to a form in which we enter details of the purchase order we are creating. First, enter the date of the purchase order and the terms of the purchase. Next, you will select the vendor from whom you are making the purchase. Then enter the contact information of the person with whom you are arranging the purchase. Then enter the FOB information. Once you have entered this information, click on the Save button. Another button will then appear called Add Details. This button allows you to add items which you wish to purchase to the purchase order. When you click on this button, a window will pop up in which you enter details about the item you want to purchase. First, from the drop-down list, choose the material you wish to purchase. Then enter the quantity of this item, as well as the price for each item. Then enter any comments and the delivery date for the item and click on Save to add the item to the purchase order. Repeat this as many times as necessary to add all the desired items to the purchase order. You'll also notice that on the right side of the screen there is a Print button. Clicking on this button will print out a paper copy of the purchase order. After clicking on the button, you will be prompted to choose your printer. Select the printer and click OK, and the purchase order will print out. I'll now click on the Purchase List tab to return to the list of purchase orders. One more thing you can do at this screen is edit an existing purchase order. To do this, click on the Edit button for a purchase order. This will take you to the screen on which the purchase order information is displayed. You can change any of the information here, and you can add new items to the purchase order by clicking on Add Details. Or you can edit existing items by clicking on the Edit button for an item in the purchase order which will then display a window in which you can edit the details for that item. Right now, I'll just click on the Cancel button to exit from this purchase order and return to the main list. The last section of the inventory module we will discuss is the Receiving section. To navigate to Receiving, we will simply click on Receiving under the Inventory tab. Doing so will take us to a list of open purchase orders for which items still need to be received. Then we will find a purchase order in this list for which we want to receive items and then click on the purchase order number. Doing this will take us to the purchase order itself, and the items that were ordered in that purchase order will appear below. To receive an item, first click on the item number in the list of items to be received, and the item will be selected. Then click on the Receive button. A window will pop up in which you enter the quantity of the item you have received, the date on which the items were received, and the expiration date of the items. Then click on the Save button and the quantity you have received will be updated. Once you have received all of the items called for in the purchase order, you can close the purchase order. To do this, we will return to the list of purchase orders by clicking on Purchase Order under the Inventory tab. From the list of purchase orders here, we will click on the Edit button for the purchase order for which we have received all items. Now that we are viewing that purchase order, locate the checkbox in the top left corner of the purchase order display with the word Close next to it. To close the purchase order, just click in this checkbox and then click on the Save button. Now the purchase order is closed and it will disappear from the list in the Receiving section of Open Purchase Orders. This concludes our presentation of the EZMWeb Inventory and Purchasing module.